I never thought much about sharing my home with someone again. After years of living alone, the quiet had wrapped itself around me like an old, comforting coat. But when my nephew Adrian knocked on my door one rainy evening, suitcase in hand, and a tired smile stretched too thin, I didn't hesitate. Blood is blood. He said he needed a place to stay for a few months while sorting out family matters. I simply nodded and helped him inside, never questioning the choice. Adrian wasn't a kid anymore. At 22, he stood taller than I remembered, his face sharper, his voice deeper, yet something about him remained painfully boyish. The way he leaned into hugs a second longer, or how he watched the world with cautious eyes, searching for anchors. Maybe that's why, despite the years apart, the old bond between us reignited effortlessly, like dry wood catching fire. Our days fell into a quiet rhythm. I worked during the day. He took up small freelance gigs online. Evenings were our time, cooking half-burned dinners together, laughing over old stories, playing video games we both pretended not to take seriously. It felt good, needed even. Somewhere in the comfort of it all, I forgot to be cautious. It was a Friday night when exhaustion finally caught up with me. I'd barely stumbled through the front door before collapsing onto the couch. Adrian chuckled softly, throwing a blanket over me without a word. Through heavy lids, I caught the faint curve of his smile before the world slipped into darkness. I don't remember dreaming. Only a vague sense of warmth pressing against my side, a gentle weight that neither startled nor stirred me. Half asleep, I thought it must be the blanket slipping, or maybe a pillow nudged against me. In my drowsy mind, it felt safe, familiar. Sometime later, minutes, hours, I couldn't tell, I stirred enough to sense a hand brushing lightly against my hair, a feather-light touch, soothing and careful, as if afraid to wake me. For a fleeting moment, confusion sparked behind my closed eyes, but fatigue chained me down, and the sensation faded into oblivion as sleep reclaimed me. Morning arrived, wrapped in soft gray light. I woke on the couch, the blanket still tucked carefully around me. The house was silent, save for the distant clatter of dishes from the kitchen. Adrian was already up, humming quietly to himself, moving with a tenderness that seemed oddly deliberate. Part of me wanted to ask about the night before, the touches, the warmth, but the words jammed stubbornly in my throat. Instead, I sat there, the memory gnawing gently at the edges of my mind, whispering that something between us had shifted, subtle as a breath, but undeniable as a wound. I told myself it was nothing, just family closeness, a moment of comfort misunderstood by a tired mind. But deep down, something warned me. This was only the beginning. The morning unfolded like any other, but an invisible thread pulled between us, tightening with every passing moment. Adrian moved about the kitchen barefoot and quiet, preparing breakfast with unusual care. I watched him from the couch, noting the deliberate way he arranged the plates, the almost shy glances he tossed over his shoulder when he thought I wasn't looking. Something in the air had changed. It wasn't just the memory of a hand brushing through my hair or the lingering warmth across my skin. It was the way my chest tightened when our eyes accidentally met, how my breath caught at the simple curve of his smile. I shook the thoughts loose. This was Adrian, my nephew, the boy I once carried on my shoulders at the beach, the one I cheered for at Little League games. Yet the man standing before me now was different, not in body alone, but in the way he looked at me, like I was something fragile, precious even. "You should eat before it gets cold," he said, sliding a plate toward me, his fingers brushing mine in a touch that lasted half a second too long. I nodded mutely, the silence between us filled with unsaid things. As we ate, Adrian spoke in soft tones about trivial matters, a freelance project he was working on, a book he wanted to read. I answered where I could, but my mind wandered, trapped in the sensation of his nearness. The strange fluttering deep inside me I could neither explain nor banish. After breakfast, he stood behind me as I adjusted my tie for a meeting, his hands reaching out to fix a crooked knot. His fingers grazed the skin just below my jawline, light and unhurried. I froze, heart hammering against my ribs. I could feel his breath, warm against my neck, and for a moment, neither of us moved there, he whispered, stepping back. Perfect. I stared at my reflection, not recognizing the man blinking back at me. A man shaken by something he couldn't name, without tearing apart the life he knew. Spent the rest of the day fighting against the echo of that morning, the casual intimacy, the stolen glances, the silent questions hanging heavy in the spaces between us. Logic demanded I dismiss it all as nothing more than misplaced affection. But deep in the marrow of my bones, I knew better. When Adrian left for his part-time job that afternoon, he paused at the door, one hand lingering on the frame, his gaze catching mine in a moment so charged it left me breathless. There was something in his eyes, longing, fear, hope, a silent confession waiting for a reply I wasn't ready to give. The door closed softly behind him, but the weight of that look stayed behind, pressing against my chest, leaving me to wonder if we had already crossed a line we could never return from. Night came heavy and slow, settling over the house like a thick, suffocating blanket. I sat outside on the small wooden porch, nursing a cup of coffee gone cold, staring out into the endless black, the stillness pressed against my skin, amplifying every restless thought swirling inside me. I heard the screen door creak open, soft footsteps approaching. Adrian slid down beside me close enough that our arms brushed. He didn't say anything at first, neither did I. The silence between us felt too delicate, a single wrong word enough to shatter everything. "I couldn't sleep," he murmured after a long moment, his voice raw around the edges. I nodded, stiffly, afraid that if I spoke, I'd betray the chaos roiling inside me. Instead, I kept my gaze locked on the horizon, on the way the stars blinked stubbornly against the night. Adrian shifted, turning toward me. I felt his eyes on me, heavy, searching. My hands curled tighter around the mug, white-knuckled. "I need to tell you something," he said, barely louder than a breath. Every part of me screamed to get up, to escape whatever confession hung trembling on his lips, but I stayed rooted, unable to move, trapped in a moment that already felt irreversible as Huffam. "Last night," his voice cracked, and he swallowed hard. "When you were sleeping, I—" He broke off, dragging a hand through his hair in frustration. I stayed by you. I touched your hair. I held your hand. I know I shouldn't have. I just—" He exhaled sharply, defeated. "I couldn't help it." I stared at him then, really looked and saw the truth blazing across his face. Not shame, not embarrassment. Love. Twisted, desperate, beautiful in its impossibility. "You're not just my uncle to me," he whispered, voice trembling. "You never have been." The world tilted, sharp and cruel. I wanted to deny it, laugh it off, tell him he was confused. But deep inside, a tiny, traitorous part of me admitted what I had known for days, perhaps even longer. I had felt it too, that dangerous spark, that forbidden ache. My throat burned with words I couldn't say. How could I admit to feelings that would dismantle everything we were supposed to be? How could I tell him that in the safety of sleep, I had leaned into that touch, had craved it without understanding? "I'm sorry," Adrian whispered, "but I'm not sorry for loving you." His confession hung between us, a fragile, blistering thing. I could crush it with a single word or cradle it carefully and damn us both. I set the mug down, hands trembling. Adrian looked away, as if bracing for rejection, but I couldn't speak. My heart beat out a frantic rhythm against my ribs, echoing a truth I wasn't ready to voice. We sat like that for a long time, two broken souls adrift in a night too dark for easy answers, knowing that whatever came next, we could never return to what we once were. Days passed, but the night on the porch stayed etched between us like a scar. We moved around each other carefully, as if speaking too loudly might reignite the fragile truth we were both trying so desperately to contain. Adrian gave me space, retreating into silence while I wandered the house like a ghost, haunted by things I could no longer deny. Every glance we exchanged was charged, weighted with all the things we wanted, but dared not reach for. Sometimes I caught him watching me when he thought I wasn't looking, his eyes soft and unbearably sad. Sometimes I found myself standing outside his door late at night, hand raised to knock, only to pull it back and retreat to my empty room. One evening, as the sunset bled crimson across the sky, I found Adrian sitting in the backyard, legs crossed, staring into nothing. The sight of him, so still and small against the vastness of the coming night, cracked something inside me. I sat down beside him, close enough to feel the tremble in his shoulders. For a long while, neither of us spoke. The air was thick with everything we hadn't said. "I can't stay," Adrian said finally, his voice rough. "It's not fair to you." His words sliced deeper than I expected. I should have agreed, should have told him it was for the best. That distance would heal the fracture between us. But instead, my chest tightened painfully, and the thought of losing him pressed down harder than any shame ever could. "You don't have to go," I said, the words escaping before I could stop them. They hung there, raw and trembling, between the spaces where reason had already failed. Adrian turned toward me, his face a mixture of hope and agony. "If I stay, it won't change how I feel." "I know," I whispered. He hesitated, then reached out slowly, giving me every chance to pull away. His fingers brushed against mine, tentative and shaking. This time I didn't move. I let the contact linger, the quiet burn of it searing into my skin. Maybe we were wrong. Maybe we were reckless. But in that moment, the world narrowed to the place where his hand touched mine. And for the first time, in what felt like forever, I let myself be selfish. The stars began to appear, tiny sparks against the endless black. We sat there beneath them, two souls tethered by a love too complicated to name, knowing tomorrow would bring questions, judgment, maybe regret. But tonight, we had the simple, devastating truth of each other. I leaned my head against his shoulder, and he let out a shuddering breath, wrapping his arm around me with a tenderness that spoke louder than any apology ever could. Maybe love wasn't always pure or simple. Maybe sometimes love lived in the broken, messy spaces where right and wrong blurred into something achingly human. And maybe, for tonight, that was enough.